Good morning, one and all present here. I welcome you all to the 87th webinar of the Saturday webinar series by Managed CIA. I'm Zenith, working as content developer at Managed CIA. The Center for Innovation and Agripreneurship is a center of excellence hosted at the National Institute of Agriculture Extension Management, and it is one of the leading agribusiness incubators in the country. Managed CIA has till date supported more than 450 entrepreneurs and has incubated more than 300 agri-startups from various focus areas of agriculture and allied sector. The topic for today's session is Agri-Startups in Supply Chain Management, Opportunities and Challenges. We have two speakers joining us today. Our first speaker is Dr. M. Bhasi. He's a senior professor at School of Management Studies at Kochi University of Science and Technology. I request Dr. M. Bhasi to take over the session.
Thank you. You can close this poster, no?
Yeah, just a
Yes. Yes, sir. You may start, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you. The topic being agri supply chain and entrepreneurs who want to come into this area. Being a professional from the supply chain area, I would like to discuss and give some idea of characteristics of the agriculture supply chain. Characteristics of agri supply chain. Just before that, I'll just take you through a small experience sharing, which I want to do regarding certain new type of models that emerged, for agri supply chain models that emerged during COVID-19 when the traditional models failed. Cauliflower farmer, transport, see some innovation. The stacking is in such a way that full load is carried by a cheap means and sales in the market. Ultimately, products which are consumed by people. So here, this are some statistics. India produces around 146 million tons of vegetable, and potato, tomato, onion, cabbage, and brinjal account for 60% of the vegetable production. Similarly, fruit production is 75 million tons and 6.3 million hectares. Major fruits being mango, banana, citrus fruits, apple, guava, papaya, pineapple, and grapes, of which banana is the fruit which is available throughout the year. In India, fresh vegetables play a vital role in the diet mix of a typical Indian family. Fruits consumption is low, but is steadily picking up. There are certain characteristics of vegetables and fruits. Supply chain. The production is distributed and is in small holdings, not very, very large holdings. So what is the impact of this small holding agri producers? The impact is that to get a certain quantity, which will make a truckload, there have to be some aggregators who have to take from these small farmers and aggregate and make a truckload, which will be sold. So this aggregator at the between the farmer and the usually it's a wholesaler who aggregates a collection, buyer from the farmer who aggregates. And for certain commodities, there are 2-3 levels at aggregation. For example, village level, then at maybe taluk level. So different levels of aggregation from which a regular buyer buys. So this aggregation takes time and it has effect on the quality because handling and storage in aggregation unit is not very, means it's not cold storage, it is just regular storage. And handling, rough handling also creates problems for the vegetables. And of course, there is the margin which is taken by these aggregators, which increases the final price. Then is at the other end, it is wholesalers in large vegetable markets who buy these truckloads from either the aggregators or there are brokers in between who will arrange this load for the aggregator, from the aggregators. So the broker also comes in, he takes his margin. Then is the wholesaler in typical markets who does the distribution work. The other part was the collection work, then the transmission, transport job, and then starts the distribution setup where the maybe district or taluk level wholesalers, they buy and then from them retailers buy and sell. So in this, one thing to be observed is at the market, both at the aggregator level and at the distribution level, there are certain people who specialize in certain. For example, someone is there who will collect only strawberries. Another is a potato merchant. Another is an onion merchant. He deals only with one commodity. And mainly, these people who deal with one commodity are dealing with these products which are sold and could be obtained throughout the year. For very seasonal crops, there are wholesalers who come up, do the business, and then move on to another product in another season. So like I told, merchants and traders dealing with one product are there, both at this collection, means inbound supply chain and in the outbound. Marketing is a challenge because this is most of the time vegetable is a commodity. You can't distinguish. Now they are distinguishing between organic and regular normal vegetables, but that is the only, and there are a lot of challenges. See, this distinguishing and trying to get, now retail outlets are branding themselves and trying to get some value through their branding. But then otherwise in the most of the vegetable market, it is just a commodity and with price fluctuating very much. And always this fluctuation is to the disadvantage of both, mainly disadvantage of the farmer. Fluctuations are to the disadvantage of the farmer, meaning when there is more of produce to sell, the price goes down. And it is also at the disadvantage of the customer because customer has no control, because customers buy in small quantities. They don't have too much of say in the market. Only they can decide how much to buy. When the price increases, they can buy lesser quantity. That is the only force customers can exercise in the market. And that also is now with the incomes of most people rising, that effect on the price elasticity of demand is not exhibited too much. In a study, it was reported that the price of onion and consumption of onion only has some There is some effect, but say the price doubles, then the consumption doesn't become half. The consumption drops by 1/4. Price doubles, consumption drops by 1/4 and not by half. So for many of the vegetables, the price elasticity, but for fruits, it is there. Price elasticity is highly there for fruits. And vegetables also, when they become very cheap and are sold at very low prices, at that time, there is high demand. But in the mid-range and above, slightly above mid-range, it is nearly the same. Very high price, again, it drops. But then in the mid-range and slightly above mid-range, price elasticity is not observed in villages. So in this supply chain, I told you about the supply chain. The challenges are the distributed production, perishability, seasonality. Any businessman would like to have a steady flow of orders, steady flow of supplies, and then managing the business becomes very easy. But then in agri supply chains, the availability, sourcing is also not steady. It is highly distributed. Commodity is perishable, low margins, and most of the products are bulky. The products are bulky compared to the volume, the price is less. So in transport, just because you are transporting vegetables, the lorry fellow will not take a lesser transport charge. His charge are fixed, whether you transport a bulk gold in that or you transport vegetables, his charge will be fixed. So what happens is the impact of transport cost on the total cost becomes high. And the very nature of the small size holdings by farmer, varied climatic condition, production spread through a wide geographical area, many in remote villages, and diversified consumption. Very important point, diversified consumption. No one likes to eat the same vegetable every day for lunch, dinner. At the consumption level, people like change, variety. So if variety is liked at consumption level, at demand level also, demand for various vegetables from the same family in different weeks will keep changing. So when that happens, demand changes, then for the perishable product, then forecasting demand is a little difficult. So if more is procured and kept by in the supply chain by the members who are playing the different roles, then because of perishability, there is likelihood of losses of product in the hand, which is very high. For some products, it is nearly 25 to 30% of all the produced is not consumed. It is lost in transit in various stages. So if this loss can be saved itself, there is a big gain. Then poor supply chain infrastructure. Again, why this infrastructure? For example, when Spply produces apple season, then almost 2,000 lorries of apple are harvested and sent out every day. Only during that season, from there, you need 2,000 lorries every day. When Nagpur orange happens, again, 2,000, 3,000 lorries every day from that region has to move out. Other times it is not needed. So what happens is temporarily these transport systems have to move to a geography. And they have been doing some other business. So if there is delay in their coming, it affects harvest and moving the products to the market. And in agri supply chain, what India lacks most is value addition and making products which will have high shelf life. But still, Indian consumers like fresh fruits and vegetables. So supply chain management definitely plays a crucial role. But because the challenges are collect from small farmers and do this collection using minimum number of intermediaries, distribute again in different small geographies. For a vegetable purchase, no one wants to drive 20 kilometers and go to a shop. They buy from the nearby locality. So sales has also to be done at different small geographies. So efficient supply chain management can be done. There are opportunities, especially opportunities of service providers. For example, a transport service provider is exclusively concentrating on vegetable supply chain service. And if that person does aggregation meaning 3-ton load, he has orders to bring 3-ton loads from 3 people from one source to a destination. So if he can combine all these 3 in one larger vehicle, he can gain. So through aggregation, trying to get into savings, and this savings can be, some say part can be taken by the people who run the show, and some can be passed on as the price advantage to a customer and the price advantage, that selling price advantage to the farmer. Vegetables, especially in cities which have urban settlements which have huge population, their door delivery and other thing models are okay working. But in places which are sparsely populated, these models are not seen to work. So one has to think how Uberization or some other method can be made to work in agri supply chains. And nowadays, it is always a tendency to store or aggregate near the point of origin, meaning near the farmer's place, products are aggregated. And then it is moved to markets according to demand. That is a good strategy, but an alternate strategy of having aggregate and move to near points of distribution could also be thought of. Organized retail into vegetable marketing has to be tried out, because most people like to go to the market in the morning and try to shop. That is a habit which has formed for generations. To break that habit will not be easy. So this is what a market stall, well-stocked stall looks like. So there are farmers, auctioneers, agents, wholesalers, and different type of vendors, cart vendors, traditional retailers, and finally the customers. Farmers to direct consumers, very less happens, except for exotic varieties. The normal ones don't go in this route. Where manufacturing is involved, from the primary producer, manufacturer or processors buy, and then they sell through wholesale agents to retailer or give directly to hospitality and catering sector. The farmers and growers, they could play a role by improving the productivity and competitiveness, and build skills to attract more people into farming, because that is not happening. Lesser and lesser people are getting attracted to farming. So there is risk of less and less area being cultivated, less people being employed. Food processors, they need to develop sustainable supply chains. Buying is more, lot of contract farming now takes place, but otherwise it is based on ad hoc basis. Call the brokers and see what is available. Improve resource efficiency and skills, manage risks and plan for the climate change. Very important. Ensure food safety, reduce food waste. Retailers, resilient supply chains which can take suddenly an increase in load, can tolerate decrease in load, improve resource efficiency and continue to innovate. Manage and plan for climate change. Again, consumers provide constant supply of vegetables, but keep buying, supporting, and may look for quality and they want affordable price also. I was talking about waste, that a photograph of the Delhi mandis and the waste which is dumped on this side of the boundary wall. So I will just, at Thailand, they have managed to do some innovation in this, where they have farmer, local market, regional collectors, cooperative societies, regional wholesale market, central wholesale market, specialist companies, they take it into export, and the others from the central wholesale market, fresh market, retail market, and all those people are serviced. And Thailand is a small country in comparison to India. See, for Reliance Fresh, contract farming, buying center, from the buying center to the distribution center to the stores. Short, they have cut on one side, this side also just farmer or contract farmer to buying center. Other intermediaries are removed and distribution center to the stores. So by reducing intermediaries, not only you can gain the intermediary share, the time taken for a fresh product to reach the shelf is considerably reduced. So this is all what I have to say as a thing. We will have some discussions in the end, I suppose. So,
Yes, sir.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presentation. We'll now move on to the next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Raj Palaji. He's the director at New Initiatives Farmer Ecosystem at Ninja Cart, one of India's largest company, fresh produce supply chain company. And he has been working on high impact strategic initiatives in agri value chain. Before we move on to the next speaker, I request all the attendees to use chat box to address their questions or any kind of query. We'll be taking up all those towards the end of the session by 11:45. Over to you, Mr. Raj. Can you hear us, sir?
Sir is on mute.
Yeah, he's on mute, but
So I'll do one thing. I'll take a couple of questions, Jeenat,
okay.
during you just contact with him. So, sir, Basi, sir, there's a specific question on spices. You are being from Kerala. Kerala is a state known for spices. There are a couple of spices where value chain is extremely important with the complexity of processing involved. Can you please give us some information on anything related to spices, sir?
Yes, I will. I had an opportunity to work with, do some consulting work for Synthite, which is a company which is oligoresin extraction company, extraction and export company. They do an extensive turmeric, ginger, pepper extraction also. So for manufacturers, the supply chain is much simpler because they buy as near as possible from the farmer. They don't involve too many intermediaries. But the problem they have is they need the product for extraction throughout the year. But the harvest season is only once, twice, maximum thrice a year. So some of the intermediaries have to do the storage and sell to these manufacturers. Manufacturing, even today, for especially a product which was asked by Ashish Sharma, turmeric, manufacturers take a smaller quantity. The unlabeled powdering condiment industry consumes the maximum, and they don't buy too much and keep with them. They always buy on need basis. Therefore, for a product like turmeric, which has to be boiled, dried up, and then sold to the market, that kind of processing has to be done, which is best done, which is very traditional way of processing, not the high-end extraction. So the traditional processing has to be done very near the source rather than near the market. Powdering and things can be done near the point of consumption. But ginger is taken fresh. So ginger has to be moved as far quickly as possible to them near the market. But turmeric is different. Turmeric has to be pre-processed for the market also, general market also, because raw turmeric is very consumed by some Ayurvedic companies in a small quantity. That is a minuscule portion of the total turmeric production. So these harvesting, many of these spices products are dried, and in the dried form, they are sold in the market. So that is all which is needed, some grading, some drying, and then stored so that it doesn't get fungus infected and so on, so that cold storage and other things are not necessary for spices.
Yes, sir, that's a very good experience as well as elaborate answers to understand how the spices ecosystem or a supply chain works. That's great, sir. There is one more question related to transportation, sir, which everybody knows. Logistic plays a huge role in fresh farm produce, especially. So, what do you suggest in your experience would be the way to deal with logistics issue? What mode of transport you would recommend in general for vegetables? So is there any government interventions or compliances required when as a supply chain company or a startup you are there? Can you please throw a light on this, sir?
See, in transport of vegetables, there are hardly any restrictions put by state governments on inter-border transfer. On rice and other pulses commodities, there are restrictions put to control prices in their own states. But on vegetables, so far, restrictions have not been put. They are encouraging farmers to cultivate vegetables and get good price for it. And for transportation of fruits and vegetables, that is a tricky issue. Because, why tricky? Because in a vehicle which transports, if you fill the vehicle to full tonnage capacity, only then you make best of the transport cost base. For example, there are lorry carrying 10 tons. If you fill full 10 tons, then you make best for the best get well. But then vegetables and fruits being bulky, if you stack too high, the sack at the lowest will all get crushed. The material, fruits or vegetables at the lowest will get crushed. So for each type of fruit and vegetable, depending on its how it is, how much of stacking is possible. So one of the things what is done is in slightly rawer state, rather than fully ripe state, harvesting is done. So that slightly raw, on the rawer end rather than on the ripe end, on this side of ripening, harvesting, if it is done, then during transport, you can transport more in a lorry and you can save cost. But if it is product is fully ripe, then too much of stacking, it's not possible. And you have to transport in smaller vehicles. You can't afford to take big vehicles, because in big vehicles, you will have to stack more. And then each place, it is called milk run. Milk run means you go and collect from multiple localities, multiple farmers in the beginning. That is a milk run. And then delivery also can be a milk run to two, three wholesale markets in nearby districts. So that is done if the distance between the farmers and the wholesale region is very high. Very high meaning around 500 plus kilometers. If it is less, 200 kilometers or less, transporting in light commercial vehicles is the best for fruits and vegetables, rather than on 10 ton, 14 ton topics. Where it is 500, 400, 500 or more kilometers away, then a larger vehicle is better.
So continuing to that, that's very good answer, sir. I mean, I hope Sudhakaran sir has received whatever information is required. He'll be providing further information if I mean on mail IDs of the speaker, so that we can talk to them if you need anything. So one more thing, recently many of them are introducing solar based cooling systems, solar based intermediate cooling, so that who do not have access to bigger houses or bigger warehouses, so can be utilized. Can you please throw some light on that, sir? How these are being done? What is the future of it?
Between use of solar energy for cooling and for drying, it is
Yes,
more
sir.
efficient for drying.
Yes, sir.
It's more efficient if you use solar energy for drying. For cooling, the system is inefficient because solar to electricity conversion, 70% efficiency. And then any refrigeration system is again around 70, 65, 70% efficient. So if energy efficient wise, yes, but cost of energy is lesser if you use solar over a long term, because initial capital investment is higher. So over a long term, the production cost is much, much lesser. And therefore, and anyway, cooling, if you pre-cool, then there is a certain distance up to which it remains fresh. But after pre-cooling, so for example, in summer, if you have to transport the whole thing through Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, pre-cooled thing also will become bad, because pre-cooled thing has to be kept pre-cooled or has to be consumed soon after taking out of pre-cooling. If that is not possible, not cooling is better. I repeat, if you have fruits or vegetables and you have to transport it over a very long distance and you can't keep it cool there, then better not to cool it. If you cool it, then transport it through lesser distances and consume it quickly. Because pre-cooled thing, if it is kept outside for long, then it deteriorates faster.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So anyone would like to interact with the sir? Rajbali, sir, can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, just joined. Can you hear me? Is my voice
Yes,
audible?
sir, we can hear you, sir. All good, all good. We were just taking some questions for Basi, sir. We got very good insights from him. You can start, sir, now. You can start. Janet, you can make sir present.
Actually, I have joined via mobile. You have helped me. Someone has to share the presentation.
We'll do that, sir. I think we can do from our end. Janet, can you share the sir presentation? I think she will be sharing in a moment, sir. I think you can.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
You can continue it, your presentation, sir.
Cool, no problem. So meanwhile, thanks for having me.
Just let me know
good
which
session
slides to
by
change.
Professor. Yeah, sure.
Yes, we can do that.
So thanks to the professor for setting up the stage. I think he has covered most of the points. I don't have nothing much different, but What probably I can do is in terms of giving a different perspective from a industry specific or from a startup specific of what all he has covered. Cool. First, let me introduce myself. Myself, Raj Balaji, and I am working with Ninja Card. Ninja Card is a 6.5 year old company. I am here close to about 4.5 5 years now. And my role in Ninja Card spanned across multiple functions, right from setting up operations for different cities. The definition of setting up operation is about setting the supply side, setting the demand side, getting the supply chain up and running, and take the particular business unit towards the profitability. Okay, and when I joined, it was only one business unit, which is basically your Bangalore business unit, where we were doing close to about 60 tons. And currently, if you look at the scale, we are doing close to about 1,800 tons a day of fruits and vegetables. Okay. Please move on to the next slide. Okay, so these are my assumptions when I was thinking about what should I talk about it. So I had 4 5 assumptions. So I thought I'll set the context here. So I think my role for the discussion is to make sure, especially for the participants, to kindle the interest towards, especially the opportunities or upcoming opportunities in this particular arena, and what all it takes for the participants to grab that opportunity. And okay, and so I think I'll be following the language of discussion would be around in.
Hello, sir, can you hear us?
We lost for a moment. I think he might have got call. He's on the phone.
Okay, okay.
So meanwhile, you have any questions? I request everybody to chat. Yes, sir. You are back, sir.
Can you hear?
We lost
Can
for
you
a
hear
moment.
me?
Yes, we can hear you now, sir. Please continue. Yes, sir. We can hear you now, sir. You can continue, sir. Please.
Hello.
We can hear you now, sir. We lost you for a moment, but we can hear you now. Raj, sir, can you hear us? Hello. Okay. Meanwhile, we'll take a question if he till he comes back. So there is a sir, Basi sir, there is a question on turmeric.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
See, it is a question about the price discovery. In Indian market, there is no formula by which a price is set.
Okay.
It is based on the forces of demand and supply and the power each has. Power, the quantity, and how large a purchaser they are, how steady a purchaser they are. These market forces determine, and supply chain, supply demand gap determines the price. And it is not steady, it keeps on moving. So it is like asking in a card game, which is the card should I play next? It all depends on which other people played in the round. So in the price also, one will have to get into the market and take a position and find out the reaction of the others and so slowly move to the best price position one is comfortable with. You don't get formulas, you don't get things to know this. You will know what are the price bands in which the price moves. That the statistics Department of Statistics, Agri-Statistics will give you. But besides that, individual transactions, how will it happen? You will have to go and play the game. So the broad band you will know if you contact the Statistics Department, which collects and presents market data.
Thank you very much, sir. There is a question, generic question on webinars. Sir, somebody want to speak, you can raise your hand, sir, so that we can unmute you. There is option to raise your hand. You can raise it so that we can unmute.
There was a question
Yes,
from
sir.
Vic. That is, what is the main objective of supply chain management?
Yes, sir.
Objective of supply chain management is connect the suppliers to the consumers using minimum cost. Connect the suppliers to the consumers using minimum cost. So if you can do that, you have done excellent supply chain.
Yes, that's very nicely put, sir. Supply chain, because the entire objective of supply chain is to make sure optimization of resources and connecting farmer to the end and intermediary, reducing the intermediaries. That is also one of the objectives of the startups who are coming to the system. Sir, there are a couple of people who would directly want to ask questions. Meanwhile, Jinath, you check whether Sarah joined attendees. Sumit Naikwadi, we are going to unmute you. You can unmute Sumit also, Jinath. We can talk directly.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Sumit, please. Be straightforward and be stick to the topic, please.
How much important pre-cooling in supply chain management?
It depends on the product. Certain, for example, banana, you don't need to pre-cool. You have to harvest it as little before fully ripe, and you don't have to pre-cool. But apples, for example, pre-cooling is good. Pre-cooling is good.
We are a grower strawberry and
strawberry, yes, strawberry pre-cooling is good. And strawberry, the problem is handling too much. If you stack in, put it in things, then if you have to, if non-crushable packets, if you have packed in, then you can stack. Otherwise, strawberry, if you stack, then in transport, there will be problems. So if you, but if you pack in non-crushable, then that is, it adds to the expense. It adds to the expense. So one has to think, usually now we don't have, say for example, if you have like for egg transport, egg is very crushable, breakable, no? For egg transport, they made trays in which it could be transported. Similarly, some innovator has to make some kind of trays or things in which strawberry can be transported without crushing. It will be a great thing.
Raj, sir, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly well.
Hey, first of all, I'm really so sorry for such a mishap. Anyways, given the time we have, so I'll try to cover it as much as possible. I can. Okay, so continuing from where I have left, I think at this juncture, a lot of things have changed, especially post-COVID, and a lot of disruptions has happened in supply chain, especially in agri supply chain. Like Mr. Professor said, shown with an example of cauliflower. And so as multiple other stuffs we have observed in last 1.5 years now, and I think it is going to stay. And so hence, as a participant, I think you should know how things are shaping up and what all things can be done to accommodate those needs and cater to these needs. And largely, whatever examples, whatever I'll be talking about is from a horticulture perspective, that too largely from an Indian geographical context. Please move on to the next slide. Okay, so first I'll maybe talk about NinjaCart's business model. NinjaCart is known for NinjaCart is basically agri-tech supply chain company where we connect, we provide market linkage to the farmers by cutting multiple intermediaries in the value chain and directly deliver to one level above the end consumer, which is basically anybody who sells fruits and vegetables to the end consumer. It could be your Kirana store, or it could be your modern trade retail, or it could be your Telawala, like your pushcart vendors, or it could be your mini markets. So, or it could be your Horeca segment, hotel, restaurants, and caterers. So we procure from farmer and we directly connect it to the customers who serves to the end consumer, right? And it's all tech-based supply chain. We don't use it's all we have developed multiple internal apps and external apps for the stakeholders to use, and all the information is flown through that app, and based on that information the stakeholders can act upon. So very high level flow is so farmers are put up in villages and sub villages where we put up something called collection center, like Professor said in Reliance Fresh example. It is called buying center, where we procure directly from farmers based on the demand, based on the quality norms, based on the prices, and so on. And then it moves to something called fulfillment center, where, say, for example, onions from Nasik. Onions will come from Nasik, or potato will come from Agra, tomato will come from Kolar, and so on. Multiple other SKUs comes from different regions, and it gets aggregated in the fulfillment center. From there, it gets to the what we call it as a distribution center or dark stores. So in a B2B context, like your general trade retail, modern trade retail, and so on. So we have something called micro distribution center. It's nothing but a mini small warehouse which is put up in your neighborhood. From there, the items gets delivered to the all the shops or the customers who have ordered with us. Okay. In terms of dark stores, so basically, if you look at the Flipkart B2C business model, Flipkart, Grofers, Swiggy, Super Daily, and so on, multiple other companies, Dunzos of the world, and they have something called dark store. It is nothing but your distribution center. We deliver to the dark store. From there on, say for example, if it is Swiggy, Swiggy employ their own delivery workforce. From there on, the delivery workforce will pick up the item from the dark store and then it will deliver to the end consumer. Okay. And that is how the business model is. And currently, we are doing close to about 1,800 to 1,900 tons of fruits and vegetables per day, spread across 45 to 48 SKUs, getting procured from close to about 18 plus or 19 states, and getting delivered or catered to the customers who are put up in 7 metros largely. Okay, please move on. Okay, so before I get into from a business context, I thought I'll give you a high level overview of the supply chain. Typical supply chain that you must have been reading, studying, and all these things is a basic funda only, where supply chain, the raw material given to the processor or the manufacturer, and then it gets distributed to the retailers, and then it is given to the end consumers. And typically, from a context perspective, everybody talks about the material flow. So from there on, the material given to him, and then from that material gets aggregated, batched, and it's been distributed. Okay, but one of the context of supply chain, which is largely underutilized and which anybody can unlock for a better returns, is basically your fund flow and the information flow. Which means, what I mean by that is, say for example, you can differentiate recently harvested material, or maybe fresh material and not so fresh material, which can give us a better returns. And the fund flow is basically across supply chain, you have a lot of funding opportunities. Say, for example, you can do a trade finance, bill discounting opportunities between the trader and the buyer and the seller. Okay, and the and this when you give you a material, you expect money in return, right? And this is passed on back to the same supply chain. The same supply chain can be leveraged to pass on the money as well. Okay, and basically, when you do a supply chain design for your requirement, say for example, like Professor said, in agri context, you have from a supply side, farmer land holding is very highly fragmented, marginal, which means the yield per land holding would be less, and it's largely sparse. Say for example, for a retail store to sell fruits and vegetables, they have to have at least 10 to 15 types of fruits and vegetables to cater to their customers in that neighborhood. It could vary from your potato, onion, tomato, bindi, cucumber, and it is largely seasonal based. One season, maybe the cucumber, especially during summer, cucumber sales would be much high. And the other season, bindi sales would be going high, so on. So when you work on this context, you have to have prepare a supply chain, proper design for your supply chain, and which largely spans across. When you work on a supply chain, this is what the companies will typically look at a broad level. First is the plan, second one is the source where you are procuring from, and whether it's a make here is like how you're packaging, how you're batching, and all those stuff from agri context, and how you're planning your returns. Say for example, we have given a material and the customer doesn't like it, and you have a provision of picking back the stock also. It's like a return reverse logistics, and the so these are the things that you have to keep in mind when you as a role. So when we working on scaling up in Ninja, this is how we arrived at. These are the 4 5 points we considered to arrive at a supply chain design, especially from a perishable context. Like Professor said, has highly emphasized on the perishability of the vegetable supply chain, because if these needs to be consumed, most of the SKUs, unlike your onion or unlike your garlic, which can be stored and can be consumed for 4 5 days, but unlike onion and garlic, most of the SKUs are highly perishable in nature, which means it needs to be transported within certain period of time, and it needs to be consumed at a consumer end with a certain period of time. Otherwise, there is no point of buying and consuming those perishable commodities, right? So when we expanded from Bangalore, at that point of time, we used to do close to about 60 tons a day. It was around 2017 or 18 or so. And when we thought we will expand to multiple cities, we launched Chennai, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Pune, Ahmedabad, and Delhi, and so on. These are all demand centers, basically. When we launched, though, we have to have proper design in place, which it's like a sort of a playbook which can be replicated to which can help us to expand to multiple things. So one point that I want to leave, at least with respect to this slide, is that the participants or students should have in mind about 4 5 points, because supply chain design is one of the career opportunity. It's a very good career opportunity, especially in startups or startups working in and exciting opportunity if your underlying commodities, perishable commodities like fruits and vegetables. Okay, so please move to the next slide. Okay, so what especially pre-COVID or maybe some 5 years back, what we saw as an supply chain and what is emerging is what I want to give you some insights about. There are three traits actually. So one is that the traditional supply chain was focusing largely on the production, which is on the supply side. Okay, and but if you look at the emerging trend, it's more of a customer centric, where you have a provision of assortment of produce, and you have provision of returns, you have provision of visibility towards the prices and characteristics of the produce or the underlying commodity, and you have a provision of returns also, like which was not available previously. And the second thing is, can you go back to the slide, please? I think you've changed the slide. Previous slide. Previous slide. Yeah. And the traditional supply chain was not very stringent in terms of collaboration, which means, what I mean by that is that the traditional enterprises who is running the supply chains, they were having entire moving parts on their own. What do I mean by that is that the logistics, they don't have a third party logistics. They would have a own fleet of own logistics, and it is not tech enabled, it is not traceability enabled, and all those stuff. But if you look at the emerging trends, say for example, if you look at Ninja, when we initially started, we used to have our own fleet of logistics, and managing the own fleet of logistics, own labor force, workforce to do the packaging and all these things. It was very hectic because you have to have a management bandwidth to manage the contract negotiation with the logistics, contract negotiation with the labor service provider, and all these things. But now you have a provision of collaborating with multiple other players still to and still be able to deliver the same services. Correct. And the third point of a part of it is basically the traceability, especially in agri value chain, or especially in horticulture value chain, which is basically highly perishable in nature. Traceability is something that was missing before, but now you can see a lot of startups who are enabling you to have a proper traceability. And in NinjaCart, we have, suppose say if a customer who are put up in, so from a Hyderabad context, so if I'm serving a customer in Banjara Hills, and this particular retailer is returning and he has ordered 5 kg of tomato, 5 kg of onion, 10 kg of potato, and 5 kg of chili, and 3 kg of cucumber. These 5 SKUs, out of these 5 SKUs, 3 kg he is returning to me. I would be able to trace it back to who, which is, which been, where it has been procured, which farmer ka harvest, when was it harvested, what was the quality visit done by our field force, what was the quality feedback, who has processed in my collection center, who has processed in my fulfillment center, who has packed this item, when it was picked up from my fulfillment center, which driver has picked up it, and which, by what time it has been delivered to his shop. Okay, why I'm saying this is that these are the insights that you can leverage to control the returns, because end of the day, from a corporate or a private limited company perspective, end of the day you're here to make a business, right? And end of the day, your responsibility is to increase the profit margins. All said and done, as an employee or as a business leader in a particular entity, your task, whatever you do, end of day, your task is to enhance the profit margins. Either you can bring an additional revenue or you can bring down the cost, and which means the emerging trends in a supply chain, if you look at, is enabling you to bring down all the cost. Okay, so end of the day, supply chain is all, it's a cost center, right? So it is enabling you to move the goods from point A to point B, and you have your sales done and convert the goods into money, and then accrue the profit and passed on the cost to the sellers to you, and then accrue the profit, right? And supply chain is enabling you to do this thing, and which is, end of the day, it is a cost center, right? So if you look at the emerging trends or the digital supply chains, and there are 4 pillars to the supply chain. One is that what is the service level it is enabling you to maintain, and what is the cost incurred to operate that supply chain, and how agility is your supply chain. Like Professor said, if at all he used the word uberization. Suppose when it is large, sparsely located customers, how well you can design your fleet or delivery so that you will be able to still cater to that customers at low cost. Okay, and so this largely talks about basically, if your supply chain, if you have a digitally tech enabled supply chain like how we have in NinjaCart, you will be able to forecast properly how much order I would be getting, maybe in 7 days time frame or a 10 days time frame, and how well I can go, and how much capital I need to lock it as a part of our inventory, as a part of a capital I should allocate as a part of buying goods, as a part of paying to the my transport partners, or the assets that I may be using. Say, for example, if you look at NinjaCart, we largely use crates for carrying this fresh produce, your tomato, onion, potato, from point A to point B. Suppose, say, if my demand is like 1,800 tons, and I need to know how many crates I should have in my supply chain to send it back to the source, which is basically the buying center or the collection center, and bring it back to my destination, which is basically your customer point. Okay, and what is the service level that I can maintain? So one of the service level that we keep a track of it in NinjaCart is the on-time delivery. Okay, so say, for example, there are broadly three segment of customers. Basically, your general trade customers, institutional customers, and the Horeca segment. General trade is basically your nearby neighborhood mom and pop retail stores, your Kirana Wala. Okay, if you look at his portfolio of products that he sells in the retail store, one is that if you FMCG product, basically your staples, groceries, biscuits, cigarettes, and all these things. Two is basically your dairy products, which is basically your milk, paneer, curd, and all these things. And third one is your fruits and vegetables, right? If you look at FMCG products and the dairy products, it is being delivered to his doorstep. Okay, but if you look at the third portfolio of product, which is basically your fruits and vegetables, he has to buy by himself. It is not being delivered to his doorstep, right? At his shop. But whereas if you look at his behavior, he has to wake up early in the morning. In a Hyderabad context, he has to go to Boinpalli market, do a cash and carry, do a negotiation, do a cash and carry sales, arrange a transport, bring back the produce. Definitely, you would be selling at least 50 to 60 kgs per day in his neighborhood. So he has to arrange a transport and bring it back by himself. So in this transaction, if you look at, there is a cost involved, there is an effort involved. He has to wake up early in the morning, which means if it is a single person running store, run store, which means by around 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock, he'll be getting tired because he has woken up early in the morning around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock to go to the market. And then he has invested in logistics. When you invest in logistics, there is a loading and unloading happens at the market end, at the his store end. When people handle the fresh produce, which is highly perishable in nature, loading unloading happens. This is bound to have a wastage, which means that he will pass on the wastage to the end consumer only. Okay, and this wastage is not passed back to the farmer actually. Okay, cool. Please move on. Cool. So I thought I'll touch upon in our mind this is how we look at the market now. What is the need? What is the consumer need? What does the farmer need? And to cater to the need, do we have an ecosystem? Or is there anything happen in the ecosystem? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'll request you to wind up because of the time constraint.
Yeah, sure. Give me a minute. I'll close it up. Okay.
Okay, sir.
And as a participants, I want to want you guys to take up, especially on the opportunities side, upcoming opportunities where, like Professor said, there is a poor supply chain infrastructure, where there is a lot of opportunities in warehousing, commodity processing, and especially on the inputs where you can, like how we are doing on the output, there is a scope of inputs where directly marketing, directly selling to the farmers. And fourth is the fintech opportunities. Say, for example, you can do a lot of bill discounting, trade financing, farmer financing, and still we are credit-starved nation. The credit penetration, especially in the value chain, is very, very less compared to the other value chain. There is a huge opportunities in credit, especially as part of fintech. Please move on. Okay, so this is what we largely look at. So as a future leaders, if at all you're looking at this presentation or part of the discussion, I think if not all, one thing that I want you to take up. Now we have talked about what is the trend, what is happening in the market, and what is the need, what is the ecosystem, what are the opportunities available. If you are going to take up this opportunity and want to make a career for yourself, especially in this arena, is you have to possess some 3-4 qualities that is non-negotiable. And if you display these qualities and have this in you and able to take on this opportunity, I think you will have a fantastic career ahead. I think that's it my side. I thought I'll touch upon all these things due to time constraint. Maybe you can have a look at it. And I'm reachable, and I think I have given my contact details to your team. And if you need any help or even other ways also, please reach out to me.
Thank you very much, Raj Balaji sir. That was very directly coming from your experience, what you are doing, what kind of opportunities are there for the startups. There are multiple questions on whether they can get these videos and PPTs. The recorded video is available on YouTube in our Manage CIA channel. We have given the links also. It's not just for this webinar, the past 86 webinars up along with this, all the videos are available there. Most of them, if anything is missing, you can contact us. Second point, how to contact the speakers. We have already given both the mail IDs in the chat. You can write to them. Based on the mutual interest, you can take it forward and you can get the contact details also there. If you have any specific request, you can route it to Manage also. We have given our Manage contact details. Anybody is interested to go to the next level, they want to get into the Agri entrepreneurship. So we are running a pre-incubation training program. So we are going to launch it in a week. You can apply for the program. The link and everything is available there. Janata has given the link in the chat. Even we have in our Manage website also, cia.manage.gov.in. In the recent update sections, you can see that. We would thank both the speakers for taking out their time on a weekend and being here. Thank you very much, sir. We would like to thank our team, our Director General Manager, our Director Agriculture Engineering, Dr. Sarvan Raj, our team members, Alok, Jeenath, Seenu behind this. So last but not least,
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. We will see you in upcoming webinar. on emerging technologies in agriculture. What are the latest technologies which are spurring the growth and helping the farmers? Thank you very much. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.